This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com. Miz does a really good job on this segment here, and it feels like he and Daniel Bryan during this era where Daniel isn't wrestling and had to retire, they're really doing some magic together. And the reason Daniel Bryan is booked here is to promote his new book. And of course, Miz can't help himself but point out that, hey, most of the time when a wrestler writes a book, it's because his career is over. And of course they get fired up again, and out comes Macho Mandow. Him and Axel Mania do a run in here. We've talked a little bit about that gimmick since you and I discussed that tag team and the pairing as, you know, the Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage spoofs. Unfortunately, we've learned that, he's no longer with the company. Of course, you know, I'm not talking about Sandow. We know that he's now with the NWA, but, Curtis Axel no longer with WWE. I think that probably took a lot of people by surprise, considering his legacy and what Mr. Perfect meant to the organization. Were you surprised when you saw that Curtis Axel was no moss?
No, because Curtis Axel isn't Joe Hennig.
Right.
That's who he should have been day one. And I've said this, there are guys that have a legacy in this business, you know, Ted DiBiase Jr., Bob Orton, Randy Orton, Bob Orton's father. You know, you got Joe Hennig, who was third generation. Mr. Perfect was one of the best workers I've ever seen. The most creative, the most athletic. He was everything. He had it all. And he could talk, and he believed in himself. He was that guy. He was Mr. Perfect. All they would have had to do to help Joe along was just from day one, let him be Joe Hennig. And they're going to tell you that they were protecting him because nobody can be what Mr. Perfect was, and it just him being his son would damage him and hold him back. I don't believe that. When you've got a father that is that renowned in this business and has the respect of the boys like he did, to find out that his kid is actually really good, and Joe was a really good worker, and just let him be who he is. And, you know, he will go as far as he was supposed to go anyway. God had a plan for him, so he was going to get over whatever degree that was, but at least give him a chance. Don't call him something that's a total disconnect. There's just no reason in it.
Help me understand what, I mean, I know that you're going to say, well, hell, how do I know? But if you had to guess, what do you think is the differentiating factor between calling her, you know, Charlotte Flair or Cody Rhodes? Or, I mean, both of these guys have really big shoes to fill, and yet they don't have that same opinion of Mr. Perfect. I don't know. Like, how is Flair not as big of a name as Mr. Perfect? How is Cody Rhodes or Dusty Rhodes not as big of a name as Mr. Perfect? But yet those guys use their last name. I don't know. It feels weird.
Well, there's no one set rules.
Right.
Some guys are allowed to for whatever reason. Some guys are not for whatever reason. I don't know. It should be across the board. And, you know, the business has to be replenished every 5 to 10 years with a new group of young talent. If you don't have that talent resurgence every 5 to 10 years, with injuries being what they are, some guys just bombing and not making it, you're going to have a diminishing talent pool. But if you keep these third generation and second generation talent coming along that are really good, doesn't it look good for the business that these guys are following in their dad's footsteps? And as long as they have their own style and they just don't deliberately rip off all the things that the dad does, you may do 1 or 2 or 3 things that are signature that when you see it, you go, oh, Kurt used to do that. And hey, the kid did it good too. That makes me feel good about it.
Right.
That should be the way this business is. And you have, if I owned the company and I have this, you know, what about Bray Wyatt?
Right.
Taylor Rotundo, tremendous performers coming after another tremendous performer, Mike Rotundo. I mean, it's Bray Wyatt in no way is looked at as just Mike Rotundo's kid. They're so different. He's reinvented himself again, but Bray Wyatt was a whole separate cat. But it didn't bother me knowing who his dad was from time to time, reliving history.
Right. No, I think that's what we like to do. I mean, clearly the folks who listen to this podcast, I mean, they're listening to nostalgia right now, and that's what wrestling fans want. I think we respect the history of the sport a lot more than maybe some others do. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.